Good afternoon. Here, I guess I'm allowed to take off my mask while I'm up here. I have to admit, when I walked in and I saw all the chairs separated like this, it was a little bit like the detention classroom I was in 8th grade, where they kept people apart so that they wouldn't talk to each other. But I hope you're not here feeling like you're here for detention, but quite the contrary, here for enjoyment and pleasure and rumination. But it's nice to see so many of you. I'm Adam Weinberg, the Alice Pratt Brown Director of the Whitney Museum. Thank you for being here in person. And I hope that you're walking through the exhibitions today, that the pleasures of looking at the actual works and not just on Zoom has kind of come back to you yet again. It is our great pleasure today because we are celebrating our 3 fall exhibitions, one being already open, the Jasper Johns, but we have Jennifer Packer, The Eye is Not Satisfied with Seeing, up on the 8th floor, My Barbarian, which is downstairs, and The Labyrinth of Forms, Women and Abstraction, 1930 to 1950, which is just outside the doors. Having 3 shows open in the same month and in such close succession, as well as increasing visitorship, and I'm sure you hopefully saw the energy in the galleries, which is great, truly a cause for great joy on our part. We're really grateful that you could be here and celebrate with us today. I'd like to thank our exhibition curators, Adrienne Edwards, the Engell Speyer Curator and Director of Curatorial Affairs, who is over there. Sarah Humphreville, who is our Senior Curatorial Assistant, who's sitting over here. Jane Panetta, who is Curator and Director of the collection. Where is Jane? Right over there. And I also want to acknowledge our Chief Curator and Deputy Director, Scott Rothkopf, who, as I always like to say, is the conductor of our incredible orchestra. I'd also want to acknowledge Rujeko Hockley, who is the Arnhold Associate Curator, who is on leave for the moment and couldn't be here today, but she co-organized or co-curated The Eye is Not Satisfied with Jane, so we'd like to acknowledge her. I also want to extend our thanks to our friends at the Serpentine Gallery. There's Hans Ulrich Obrist, who is director of the Serpentine, who is an incredible enthusiast, as many of you know. There's more energy coming out of him than almost, not quite, as much as Jennifer Packer. Their 2 curators, Melissa Blanchflower, and also their curator, assistant curator, Natalia Grabowska, who are not here with us, but who will be seeing the exhibition, here to join us to see the exhibition in the next coming weeks. We're especially thrilled to present Jennifer Packer. It's her first major solo museum exhibition in New York, and it opens officially to the public on Saturday in the 8th floor. The show, as I think many of you have seen, has features over 30 works over a 10-year period, so that's roughly from age 25 to 35. It's the largest survey of her work to date and includes also several new paintings. I think maybe even some that, and I'm sure Jane can enlighten us, she just came back from her residency at the American Academy in Rome, and you could see actually some of the Italian references that actually precede her visit there. Packer's luscious and vibrant paintings and drawings capture Black individuals inhabiting emotionally charged environments. In fact, they feel almost vibratory, both in terms of the colors, but also in the sense of kind of movement. As Packer has said, the important thing is that the painting articulates a sincere relationship, that the viewer feels like the subjects exist and that they are humans worth thinking about beyond their relationship with me. The artist's work was most recently on view here at the Whitney as part of the 2019 biennial, and some of you mentioned that you saw that, and we're particularly pleased because this, I think, what is the standout painting in the show, A Lesson in Longing, which is the very large painting in the first gallery, is now part of the museum's collection, and you see it upstairs. We're also grateful to share more of Jennifer's work and her accomplishments over the 10-year periods, including drawings and some of the really exquisite small paintings. We're also excited and truly honored to open a survey this week of the performance trio, My Barbarian. on the occasion of their 20th anniversary. And this is an exhibition that combines objects and performances. And in the tradition of the Whitney, it is presented in our galleries as both exhibition and performance. And recent artists who we've also have had exhibitions with performance aspects at the Whitney include our great Cecil Taylor presentation a number of years ago, right when we opened, and the wonderful Jason Moran exhibition that was curated by Adrienne Edwards, what is it now, 2 years ago? I can't even keep track. I think 3. Oh my God. See what happens in COVID era? You don't remember how long things are anymore. The members of the group, Malik Gaines, Jade Gordon, and Alexandra Segade, use performance to theatricalize social issues. They adapt narratives from modern plays, historical texts, mass media, films, and so many different sources that come together in a wonderful, magical, and also often very strange combination of things that makes you kind of rethink what it is that you're seeing and experiencing. The exhibition is really a 2-part survey, and it is, if you haven't been in the lobby gallery, the John Engell Lobby Gallery, that portion is there, and it traces the history of the group's work through video performances, documentary footage, sculptures, paintings, drawings, masks, and puppets, which are all drawn from their archive. And the second part of the survey, which you should not miss, and you can see either live or virtually, there will be 3 performances that are kicked off on November 15th and will be held throughout the museum and on live stream. These performances reconceive iconic shows from throughout their 2-decade history. So we hope that you will look at the schedule and join us for those. And in celebration of the group's incredible creative output, the Whitney has commissioned, and I want to thank Adrienne for this, a new piece called Rosebird, which is a work that was composed, directed, and performed by the trio. And it is a performance that was created, though, for the camera, and it is created in homage to the first female Chief Justice of the California Supreme Court, Rose Bird, who is most well known for her opposition to the death penalty. And the last exhibition, or the third of the trio of exhibitions, and I'm sure you saw all the little jewels on the wall when you came in. It's so magical. And what I love is these little frames make you want to come right up and study things very, very closely. It's is an exhibition called Labyrinth of Forms, Women in Abstraction, 1930 to 1950. And it officially opened on October 9th, but I think many people are just discovering it, and it's right here, as you know, adjacent to the theater. And it's works primarily drawn from the museum's collection, some quite well known, many that I think are new discoveries for even those of us on staff, but also I think tremendously so for the public. This exhibition also has 30 works by 27 artists. I think the title, Labyrinth of Forms, really is a wonderful description of it, because you really do get lost in these small images that are small, very kind of both big images, and also give you the sense that you're looking from above as well as within. And these images highlight the works of many overlooked women artists, ranging from Dora Bothwell, Agnes Lyle, Hedda Stern, Elise, Alice Trumbull Mason, Gertrude Green. Some of these names are names you know, some that you don't know, but all of which we should all know. The exhibition includes woodcuts, intaglios, lithographs, collages, drawings, and it really explores the variety of ways that artists can present themselves in terms of works on paper. I'd like to thank all of our curators, again, Adrienne Edwards, Rue Hockley, Jane Panetta, and Sarah Humphreville, for their great work on these exhibitions, for their passion, for their ideas that led to the creation of these shows, and for the importance of understanding that artists, both well-known, emerging, and under-recognized, need to be part of the museum's work. I also want to thank our curatorial assistants, Mia Mathias and Ambika Trazi, who actually make all the things happen. And they are there to support all of the efforts and coordinate all the efforts that make it happen in doing research. These projects would not have come about if it hadn't been for the dedication of the Whitney staff as a whole. I mean, as you know, I say this pandemic period, it's as if we're all running with weights on our legs, and I have to say everything we do seems to take 25% more energy than normally. And so to organize this number of shows, Jasper Johns, plus these 3 shows, plus all the performances that are coming, it's extraordinary. And I'm so honored to work with people who give so much of their lives and energy because they feel it's important to put this out into the public. So thanks to the entire Whitney staff, a number of whom are here today. Please pass it on to all of your colleagues and friends. And last but not least, I want to thank the funders. You know, this has been not an easy time, economically speaking, for cultural organizations. I think museums are a bit better off than the performing arts organizations, but it's not been easy for us with radically reduced attendance. But I wanted to acknowledge, in supporting of Jennifer Packer's exhibition, our lead sponsor, the Jerome L. Green Foundation, and our sponsorship from the Northern Trust. I also want to thank our wonderful trustee, Judy Hart-Angelo, who is one of the most enthusiastic of all people in terms of supporting our shows. I'd like to acknowledge Candy and Michael Barish, the Further Forward Foundation, Dawn and David Lenhart, who made a promise gift of the great Jennifer Packer upstairs. And also my deep thanks to Bernard Lumpkin and Carmine Bucosi and Jackson Tang for their support for the Packer show. Our gratitude also to the supporters of My Barbarian, first and foremost to Nordstrom's for sponsoring the exhibition, and they have been incredibly supportive of emerging artists, which is something that I wouldn't have necessarily thought, but when I've met with them, I so admire that they are embracing a generation of artists very much unknown to them, and that takes a lot more trust to make a commitment to artists who you don't know as opposed to the ones that we do know. Judy Hart-Angelo also supported My Barbarian, as did the John R. Engell Foundation, the Whitney's National Committee, and the Marshall Weinberg Fund for Performance. And finally, I want to acknowledge the support of David Bolger and the late Mark Lancaster, whose generous funding was essential to creating the Labyrinth of Form show. We got lots of bells here today. That must be people sending us messages. Before I hand things over, I want to just acknowledge, most importantly, the artists themselves, Jennifer Packer, My Barbarian, that is Malik Gaines, Jade Gordon, and Alexandra Segade. You know, we understand that every time an artist works with us at the Whitney, it's an act of trust, an act of commitment, and we always remember that without the artist, the museum doesn't exist. There's no such thing. And so understanding that we may be the stage, but the artists are our performers in every sense, and we're just so grateful to them. So I would like to thank you all again for being here today, and now it is my great pleasure to introduce Sarah Humphreville, who will talk a little bit about Labyrinth of Forms. So thank you for joining us.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. I am Sarah Humphreville, and I am the organizer of Labyrinth of Forms, Women in Abstraction, 1930 to 1950. I'm excited to share a little bit about the exhibition with you today. And before telling you more about it, I just want to take the opportunity to thank the many Whitney colleagues who collaborated with me on this project, the National Gallery of Art in Washington for their loan, Dolan Maxwell in Philadelphia, and again to David Bolger and the late Mark Lancaster, who provided financial support for the project. Drawn primarily from the Whitney's collection, Labyrinth of Forms examines the breadth and experimental quality of abstraction in the 1930s and 1940s and highlights the achievements of women artists. While a few of these artists are well known, such as Lee Krasner, most have been overlooked despite their vital contributions to this burgeoning movement. And even for better known artists such as Krasner, the work included in this exhibition is often early work that is less frequently shown and less well known, such as Still Life, which you see here, from 1938, which is one of the earliest abstract works that she created, and one that reveals her sophisticated understanding of negative space and her vibrant use of color. With over 30 drawings and prints by 27 artists, the exhibition also emphasizes the ways in which works on paper served as important sites for innovation and how women artists in particular innovated in advancing printmaking techniques. A fresh approach to process is evident in these two works by Dora Bothwell on the left and Minna Citron on the right. Bothwell was among the first artists to use screen printing as a fine art medium and helped it gain acceptance in the art world. Citron was one of a number of artists affiliated with the Atelier 17 print shop, which was well known for its innovation in intaglio. And these artists combined and rediscovered and invented a variety of printmaking techniques. The idea of artistic communities is also an important thread in this show, and these decades saw a network of overlapping friendships, organizations, and creative spaces form, including the Atelier 17 print shop, which I just mentioned, and the American Abstract Artists, both of which had significant numbers of female members from the outset and are prominently featured in the exhibition. Among these artists are Sue Fuller, here on the right, and Esfir Sobotkina, here on the left, who was one of the founding members of the American Abstract Artists. Labyrinth of Forms also gives the Whitney an exciting opportunity to display a few new acquisitions alongside works that have long been in the collection but have rarely, if ever, been exhibited, and all of the works on view are making their debut in this building. To take just the two examples here, Elisa's Untitled, Abstract Ovoids and Lines, and Elaine de Kooning's Untitled have both been in the collection since 1992, but have never been shown. The exhibition is also accompanied by an online essay, which provides further historical context and understanding of these figures and their works. I hope you'll have the opportunity to read it after viewing the show today. With that, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Adrienne Edwards, and thank you all very much.
That was terrific, Sarah. Thank you. And congrats on your show. It's really beautiful. And thanks to you all for being here today. Adam kind of gave a really amazing overview already. I don't know how much more I can say. But I think one of the things I want to start with is the fact that this project represents the second in sort of three parts of a series of sort of foci on artists who were working in performance and interdisciplinary art in the early 2000s and who were kind of, I think, not given the kind of due diligence and attention that they very much deserved. And so when I arrived in 2018, I presented to Scott Rothkopf, our amazing chief curator, an idea for 3 projects, and My Barbarian is the second of those. Dave McKenzie, which happened earlier in the spring, was the first of them, and there's a third to come. And so one of the things that made it important to focus on My Barbarian is the fact that they sort of in this moment when performance reemerged into museums in the early aughts, you might remember all of a sudden it was kind of everywhere, and it hadn't been for maybe 30 years or more. They were sort of really seminal. Like you saw them performing in so many museums. They've done commissions for LACMA, they've done commissions for MoCA LA, they've done commissions for the New Museum, ICA Philadelphia, SF MoMA, they've done the Whitney Biennial in 2014, and they've done 3 public programs for us. So they were sort of really central, but when I got here, I realized they'd done 20 years of work and never had been given any kind of dedicated attention, nor the kind of scholarship brought to their work that it deserves. So with that, we decided to make an exhibition. I should say, and also thank Scott again for his support and foresight, because we had planned one show before the pandemic, and then when it hit, we realized, well, we don't know if we'll be able to do performance, but we were certainly dedicated to these artists and wanted to bring their work to life. And so with his support, we were able to shift gears and to actually dedicate an exhibition space to them, whereby we created what I like to think of as a kind of jewel box, really, in which we were able to take 20 years of work and collapse it into a sort of video structure that is 3-channel. And then it coincides with, you see these objects. There's drawings, prints, puppets, a whole range of things and materials that they've used in their performances. And then to sort of gild the lily a little bit, we brought in theatrical lighting, installed it in the galleries, and sort of synced it. So each of the objects is synced to a particular video in which they are actually used and presented. So you get this kind of really animating and dynamic experience. And I have to say, this show was quite an undertaking for the artist, who didn't ever think they would have this opportunity. So we went through their archive all together, and the Whitney's team was so essential in doing this. I mean, I couldn't have been prouder at the amount of work that we all collectively put into this. It's like they brought us into their 3-part collective. It's much bigger now. And so here we have the performance program. This is transparency. You have the dates here. It's going to be a complete takeover of the museum next Friday, and we're super looking forward to it. They're bringing in 3 collaborators, who also have relationships to the Whitney in other ways. And then there's Songbook. I mean, one of the things you'll see if you spend any time in this exhibition is how music is like this through line, right? They're writing these kind of really fun poppy songs, but they're talking about really serious things that affect everyone's lives, and really kind of give a particular glimpse into American life and culture and politics. And so here, Songbook will kind of be really about their musical repertoire, and we're going to film it in LA and live feed it into New York, into probably this space in particular. Really looking forward to that. And then this image is actually on the cover of this month's art forum, just landed on our desk today. But it's going to be a double bill, which kind of presents 2 different works, and will be right here in this theater to close out our program of offerings. And then I think I'm super proud of the show and the performance program. I'm really proud of this book. This will be their first monograph. They've never had the kind of scholarly attention to their work. And so we have Joshua Chambers-Lutzen, who is a scholar in performance studies at Northwestern, who is a contributor, and Leah Gangitano, who first presented their work in New York in 2005. They've been primarily on the West Coast up to that point. And that's where I first saw their work, was at this Performa 2005 biennial. So I'm delighted that they're all contributing. And then each of the artists actually wrote essays themselves to talk about what was inspiring the work. And then here's an image from some of the workshops around Rosebird. It's going to be a lot of fun. And with that, thank you so much for your time. And I'm going to hand it off to Jane.
Thank you, Adrienne. Very, very excited about all that's coming on the My Barbarian front. I have your mask here, or someone's mask. Thank you for all being here today. My name is Jane Panetta. I'm curator and director of the collection here at the Whitney, and I'm very happy to be talking to you today about Jennifer Packer's exhibition, The Eye is Not Satisfied with Seeing. Adam gave a great intro and kind of roundup about the show already, but I'll just mention quickly, Jennifer may be familiar to some of you. She was an artist that was part of the 2019 Whitney Biennial that Rujeko Hockley and I curated. And you know, the Whitney has a long tradition, I would say, of showing artists in a biennial first. Maybe that artist is acquired, and then maybe there's a show later on, or maybe they're in another biennial. That often a biennial can be kind of our first interaction with an artist that we go on to have a longer relationship with. So this is certainly one of those instances. I think after the biennial, she was an artist we continue to talk about. And so we were really excited when we were offered this show from the Serpentine. As Adam mentioned, this was originated and organized by the Serpentine by Melissa Blanchflower and Natalia Grabowski there. And we were really happy to be showing it here. And here, Rujeko Hockley and I, again, with the very patient and extreme help of Ambika Trasi, our curatorial assistant here, presented the show here. And just to give you a kind of quick overview of the show, it's not organized chronologically. It's really, I'm thinking of it as each room of the show is kind of a mini look at all of the things that kind of interest and engage her. And the show spans about a 10-year period in her career, as Adam mentioned. And this is one of the earliest works in the show. This was made when Jennifer was studying at Yale, getting her MFA in painting. And I like the fact that it's sort of a much more rendered and different than a lot of the other works in the show. And that felt important to us to kind of show you where she started, and there are works in the show that are very recent. The show also includes a number of portraits by Jennifer Packer, and this is maybe what she's generally best known for. Often these are portraits of people she knows, that she's close to, so they're sometimes identified in the work, sometimes not. This is a portrait of the artist Eric Mack, who's also in the Whitney Biennial, also an artist in the collection, and this is actually a work in our collection, which is really wonderful. And, you know, with Jennifer's portraits, I think they're painted at all different scale, and that's a really important theme kind of throughout the show. She's really not afraid at kind of navigating very dramatically different scales. And with the portraits, you know, she gives you different amounts of information, and that's really important to her. She's often kind of retaining bits of information about the sitters. You know, this is often a protective impulse for her, and I think a lot of the work has to do with kind of protecting Black life, Black individuals, people that are in her circle and in her sphere, and that somehow, you know, this painting at once represents the intimacy that she has with her sitter, but she doesn't give you all of it. She doesn't kind of turn the work over to you entirely, and that's very deliberate. We're also very excited that there are a group of works on paper in the exhibition, and they're installed together, which was something that was different than at the installation at the Serpentine, and something we discussed with Jennifer a lot, who was very involved happily in the installation of this show. And I think for her, you know, drawing, there's no hierarchy in her mind to drawing and painting. The drawing is really as much a part of her practice, something that she does regularly, that she's very interested in thinking of it kind of alongside her painting, not as something that informs her painting. These are not works that are sort of preparatory for her paintings, but they often have a very pared down palette. So I think she's interested in thinking about how they present different amounts of information, how they convey a kind of different sensibility and tone, but how they are kind of equally important to her. She has a rigorous and daily drawing practice, I would say. There are also a number of floral still lifes in the show, and these are another kind of aspect of her work that I think she's very well known for. This is a work made in 2017 called Say Her Name, and is really in honor of Sandra Bland, who was killed while in police custody. And Jennifer started the floral still lifes, and I think they're kind of a tricky piece of her practice. I think sometimes people don't quite know what to make of them, and they feel kind of out of time or something. But she really started them in a lot of ways as a kind of place to have a respite from making portraits. Often she is making portraits of people she knows, and that there's a kind of emotional labor to that. And the portraits, I think, became, she once said, although she always says she regrets saying this, but that they were sort of an amuse-bouche for her to making a lot of her other work. But I think over time, she really saw them as a kind of amazing vehicle. Jennifer is definitely interested in the idea of kind of a memorial in honoring Black life and Black individuals, but I think really refrains from painting a likeness of someone like Sandra Bland, for an example. So instead, I think a painting like this is able to do that, to honor a life like that without her getting into the tricky space of making a one-to-one likeness. And then I'll just end on, this is an amazing large-scale painting that'll greet you when you enter the show. It's called Blessed Are Those Who Mourn, Brianna. And it's her largest painting to date. It was made for the show at the Serpentine. It debuted there. And it's definitely a work that's connected to the murder of Breonna Taylor in 2020. But again, it's not a painting of Taylor, and that's a very deliberate thing. And I think for me, this work really gets at a kind of important issue and reason why we got interested in Jennifer's work in the way we did for the biennial. That we are obviously in a moment that's rife with figurative painting, I would say, and we're seeing a lot of that. And I think at maybe first pass, one might talk about this work as a portrait, but the more I've talked to her about it, the more conceptual it feels. And I think even seeing the title and seeing the work, you kind of get at that right away. And it's really about, I think, that often these portraits, these works, these more environmental portraits are about the spaces that an individual inhabits and the relationship between those objects, those clues, and a life lived. And then it doesn't, to kind of get at someone's existence, you don't need to kind of make a direct likeness. She has a wonderful quote: "I'm interested in the codependency of humans existing in spaces, and ultimately I'm interested in the environment in as much as the figures that sit within it. And for me, again, I think that was the thing that really drew us to it, and a thing I just really want to underscore and emphasize as you go through the show. I think there are lots of different relationships to have. I think with the things she's representing in the works, you'll get clues to that from the titles of the works. But I think this is really a kind of very sophisticated and conceptual, as I would say, engagement with the idea of figurative painting, with the idea of portrait painting. So I hope you all get a chance to see the show on the 8th floor. Thanks so much, and I'll pass this over to Scott now.
Thank you, Jane, Sarah, and Adrienne. It's just amazing listening to the three of you. I'm so lucky and honored to get to work with you and learn so much from you and be inspired by you. These shows are just fantastic. And to see them all at the same time with Jasper's show and with our collection, I think I couldn't be prouder of the program right now and the work that everyone at the Whitney, all our team is doing to share this great art in this difficult time when I think it means maybe even more than it might have otherwise. So what I'm here to say is just basically a reminder of what else you could see at the Whitney apart from these excellent exhibitions. To remind you, not that it needs much reminding, that Jasper John's Mind Mirror is on view on our 5th floor until February 13th, and also in Philadelphia. So if you haven't made the trip, I really encourage you to do so. It is truly 2 shows in one, or 1 show in 2 parts, I should say. And they are complementary to one another, and I think if you see one and then you see the other, the first one maybe will mean something different in your mind. On the 7th floor, we still have selections from our collection from the earlier to mid part of the 20th century. And the reason I wanted to mention that is because although it has been on view a little longer than we expected due to the pandemic, there are a lot of surprises and new works there that were not there at the beginning, including an incredible Lee Krasner. She's on 2 floors right now at the Whitney that we installed a few weeks ago, and other works on paper that weren't there. So if you haven't been up there in a while, please go back, have another look. You'll see some old favorites, but also some really great new inclusions. And the same is true for Making Knowing, Craft and Art, which had an extension thanks to the pandemic, but something I'm thankful for because it's given us a chance to rotate in, again, recent acquisitions like this fantastic Ebony Patterson that you see here that was not there when the show opened. So I think if you venture back to the 6th floor, it's really worth it. And also going outside on the 5th floor onto our terrace where you'll see the installation of some recent acquisitions of sculpture from our collection. This is something we've been thinking a lot about. When we were uptown, we didn't really have space to show sculpture from our collection. We've made some fantastic new acquisitions by Virginia Overton and Carol Beauvais, and these were installed by Jane Panetta and Jenny Goldstein quite beautifully, so get out on the 5th floor if you haven't seen them. And I just want to give a little promo. The co-curators of our show, Adrienne Edwards and David Breslin, starring in Law & Order, CSI, or they are from the firm of Breslin and Edwards, ESQ. If you have any problem with a parking ticket, you know to call. But they are the dream team on this biennial. We had a great dream team before with Jane and Rue, and we have another one this time with David and Adrienne. They've been working so hard on this show, and it is a really beautiful exhibition that's coming together. Of course, I haven't seen all the works, but the ideas that they're exploring, the artists that they're bringing into the mix, we can't wait to share more about it with you. It opens in April, a year later than we expected, but I think we were all happy to have another year to think about the work and for the show to develop. I know the artists felt that too. And finally, I want to make a plug for Whitney.org and give a shout out to my colleagues in our digital and content teams. We've really spent a lot of time, yes, that's me, thinking about our website and our social media channels and all our digital content during the pandemic, because we know that it's been a really important portal for the work we do. So if you go to Whitney.org, you'll see a more robust selection of videos. You can find a lot of great content on the Whitney's YouTube channel. So if there's a lecture that you miss, you can often find it there. You'll see, as Adrienne mentioned, some of our performances streaming in different ways online. And we've even expanded our digital publishing program. So a shout out to Sarah in the front row for her great essay on her show. That's something we used to do a little more just for emerging artists, and we're trying to do that for more of our shows to provide a chance to share our scholarship. We're getting lots and lots of downloads all around the world, and of course these essays remain in a kind of archival way, accessible, that is not necessarily true of even catalogs or brochures. And speaking of streaming performances, I did want to draw attention to the performance aspect of My Barbarian and what you can access online. This is maybe not the best image to show that because it just looks like a calendar of events, but we will really be thinking about this kind of online diffusion and dispersal and of the work from that show, which we had to do in a way to pivot, as Adrienne mentioned, from maybe the in-gallery or in-theater experience to other ways of communicating their amazing work. So please do check out Whitney.org. Check us out on Instagram, on Twitter, and you'll see that there's a lot more to discover there. So with that, I think I meant to conclude this program and to thank you all for being here and to welcome you back into the gallery. So please enjoy our shows. Thank you.